Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. Now I'd like to recognize Dr. Richard Denison, Senior Scientist from the Environmental Defense Fund.
Thank you, Chairman Shimkus, Ranking Member Tonko, and other members of the committee for your interest in this issue and for the opportunity to share EDF's perspective on this bipartisan legislation, the Chemical Safety Improvement Act. I have 4 key points I'd like to make today. First, we have a major political opening to address an urgent health concern and to fix a law that everyone agrees needs reform. Second, the bill before us has many of the elements needed for effective reform, and it can serve as a basis for moving reform forward. Third, the bill also has serious problems that must be remedied. And fourth, those problems, while serious, are fixable. The need for reform is more urgent than ever, with science increasingly linking exposures to certain chemicals to serious health effects. My organization has been working to reform TSCA for more than 20 years, and I personally for well over a decade. The law simply does not work. It is not protecting the health of Americans. It doesn't provide the information companies need to make sound decisions, and it doesn't give consumers and the market the confidence that companies need to run their businesses. In May of this year, we saw a breakthrough with the introduction of CSIA. The bill is both a promising start and far from perfect. It contains many elements of effective reform, but needs significant changes if it is actually to deliver those reforms. I am convinced the problems can be addressed while retaining the bipartisan support needed to pass legislation. Let me note several ways in which CSIA addresses major flaws in current law. For the first time, safety reviews would be required for all chemicals in use. New chemicals would have to be found likely to meet the safety standard in order to be made and sold. Also, for the first time, state governments and medical personnel would gain access to confidential business information. CSIA would address the 2 main reasons that TSCA's safety standard has failed. It would generally replace the current cost-benefit standard with a requirement for a health-only standard. And it strikes the least burdensome requirement for TSCA regulations that has, as Mr. Jones said, become a recipe for paralysis by analysis. CSIA would also fix TSCA provisions that thwart EPA's ability to get new data on a chemical. It could issue test orders and avoid a regulatory process that takes many years. And it strikes the catch-22 under TSCA that requires EPA first show evidence of risk in order to require testing. But the bill would also erect some major barriers to EPA effectively and efficiently using these new tools. The safety standard does not ensure protection of vulnerable populations, including pregnant women, infants, workers, who may be more exposed or more susceptible to the effects. The bill would not ensure that all information claimed confidential actually warrants trade secret protections. It would weaken current TSCA by barring the testing of new chemicals or ones lacking enough data to screen their safety. This means EPA would either have to give a pass to data-poor chemicals that may pose a risk, or waste time scrutinizing chemicals that more data would show pose little risk. And the bill lacks deadlines and has so many procedural requirements that just getting the system up and running would take years. My testimony includes an analysis I've done that is quite optimistic in terms of timeframes that shows that more than 7 years would be required to get to the first safety determination for a chemical. Finally, the bill's sweeping preemption of state authority needs to be significantly narrowed so that, for example, states can continue to act until and unless EPA takes final action on a chemical and can, with good cause, obtain waivers that allow them to go further than EPA has to control the chemical risks. Mr. Chairman, let me end on the positive. The bipartisan bill offers major political opportunity and can serve as a basis for talks to move reform forward. And while its deficiencies are serious, as I mentioned before, I believe they are all fixable. I am encouraged that the informal negotiations on the bill that have been occurring in the Senate already appear to be moving it in the right direction. But there is more work to be done. I urge this subcommittee to build on the foundation laid by S 1009 to pass meaningful TSCA reform legislation in this Congress. The health of all Americans hangs in the balance, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Dr. Denison.